Welcome everyone to episode 74, Kowalski Analysis. I'm your host, Rob Kowalski, and this is a podcast designed to help you navigate the weight and become the best version of you. I got a special guest, as I always do, a new friend of mine named Stephen Thomas. And let me tell everyone who Stephen is, and then we'll jump into the conversation. So Stephen is a husband and a father who has had sobriety from porn for over 13 years. In his personal battle, he has overcome same-sex attraction, low self-esteem, anxiety, and a broken marriage. He's passionate about seeing men who feel hopelessly buried by their addictions come alive and realize the strength God has placed in them. Stephen is a certified husband material coach, certified inner child recovery coach, and recently launched his own business so he can focus his efforts on helping men overcome unwanted sexual behaviors and helping couples repair their marriages. Welcome to Kowalski Analysis, Stephen.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Is it weird to hear someone introduce you like that?
I'm getting used to it. I've been fortunately able to be on a few different podcasts recently, so just smile the whole time. And
usually I introduce the person before I bring them in, so they're not like sitting there listening to me, sing their accolades. But we did a little different tonight. So, well, cool, man. I'm grateful that we connected, and I'm really excited to dive into this conversation. When we were talking before about doing this, I have had one other person on the show, and that was probably over a year ago, that had a same, he had been in homosexual relationships and then ended up getting married to a woman, and that was great talk. But a friend of mine heard you on Sathia Sam's podcast, and they're like, dude, you need to get this guy on. So I'm excited to dive into it. So if you don't mind, let's just go ahead and start off and tell everybody your backstory, share your testimony with them so they kind of know who you are.
Yeah, man. So I grew up in a Christian family, yet even though I was in a Christian home, I remember being really sexually aware at a very young age. I saw porn for the first time at age 7. And that I remember feeling so much shame because I knew it was wrong, but I felt so much shame because I liked it. And
do you mind me asking, what was that? Because like when you were, how old are you?
I'm 38.
38. Okay, you're a little younger than me. So that was 31 years ago. I'm like, what kind of porn was going around 31 years ago?
It was Playboy magazines, right. It's like neighbor's uncle stuff,
Sure. Yep.
And but like I said, I was sexually aware, and I believe truly groomed to say yes at age 7 because so even though, like I said, a Christian family, my parents had some issues that they wrestled with. Specifically, money was one, and my mom had gone back to work. And where that left me was I was home alone with my siblings for, by age 6 for, the whole summer. And I'm the youngest. I mean, they would maybe watch me, but they're more interested in playing with their friends. So I would just go watch TV and do whatever. And I had nobody, filtering what I was seeing. Right. So I remember really early on believing I was a pervert. I remember believing that about myself. And I remember that's really bad. And in my 7-year-old brain, when I saw porn, I remember thinking to myself, whoa, this is like the second worst sin I could and I committed it. Like murder's got to be number 1, and this has to be number 2. And yeah, like I said, the thing is we're sexual beings. Sexual arousal feels good, and I liked it. So I carried a lot of shame that I was liking something that I believed I wasn't supposed to be liking. And a couple things to know too. Like I said, I was the youngest of 4. Maybe the youngest kid syndrome that we kind of live with is, if we're playing sports or something like that, it's harder for me to keep up. And without an adult around kind of navigating it, it's not like my siblings were thinking, oh, let's make this fun for him too. So it's like, oh, I could go play with everyone and be the worst. And over time, I didn't like that. So I would just retreat and not hang out with the kids and go to the TV. And I really filled my mind with lots of porn during that time.
And how old were you at this time?
From age 7 into my tweens, I watched lots of porns, especially in the summertime. So the thing about that too is this was in the 90s. I grew up in the Jordan era, and I'm from Chicago originally. And I was really excited. We got a cable box because now we could watch the sports channel and watch all the Bulls games. And that was a big deal to me. What came along with the cable box was, they had the premium channels that were like kind of scrambled out. And one of those channels was a porn channel. Now it was scrambled out, but you could still see stuff and you could still hear people having sex.
Right. Sure.
And you're nodding your head. Every guy I talk to kind of in this age range, like, knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Same. Yeah.
Exactly. And I even got, clever and figured out how to play with an old school TV to make the picture more still and stuff. I mean, so I was really, watching basically just, straight up barely blurry porn for years and years. And, and there's lots of hiddenness going along with this because, I'm not supposed to be doing this. And this, this is a sin. And from that place, I actually developed a lot of just negative beliefs about myself. One, like I mentioned already, is that I'm a pervert. Two, in my young kid brain, I didn't have the wherewithal to realize, oh, I'm just the youngest and therefore I'm not going to keep up in sports. But I actually started to believe just negative things about my body, that, I was weak, I couldn't keep up. I was a failure. I just felt like the little kid all the time.
Was that because you're the youngest or because of the porn?
I think that was because of being the youngest.
All right. Okay. I'm just making sure I'm following.
Yeah. So, and the other thing too is I went to small private Christian schools, and like I said, we were a sports-centric family, and I switched schools in 3rd grade. And something that happened there was, with a small school, everybody from 3rd through 8th grade played like on the same soccer team, and that was the first sport of the year. And I remember going to the practice and not keeping up and with everybody, and it was just a crappy experience for me. And the other thing that was really weird is in this small private Christian school, there's maybe like 5 other guys in my class, and for some reason they're all held back. So I was literally just a year younger than everybody. And I was excited at this new school to make new friends, but and I was trying to make friends with this kid that I had met there, but he was honestly just a jerk, to be straightforward. And that was really hard for me because I felt rejected, and I started to believe, oh, I guess it's because I'm not as good at sports. I'm not like the other boys. I felt like I didn't fit in, and that pain, looking back now, I believe I was looking for comfort in coping with stuff like that through the porn, and but it just fed the lies like, hey, you suck at a person, look at what you're doing, Right. So then when I got into my about 12, 13 years old, I had a friend that there was this other thing you could add to your cable box. There's this illegal box called the black box, and it would unscramble all the channels, and they had that. So we would go over to his house after school, and his parents weren't there, and we'd watch unblurred porn for hours. And a couple hours a day, I guess. And we did that a lot. And it was during that time of, there was a point where I realized as I was watching the porn that my focus shifted like to the man. And when I realized what was actually happening was that porn didn't actually show the penis. It didn't show intercourse. And I was very curious at that point. I was like, I want to see what intercourse looks like. It was actually a natural curiosity. And the fact that I'm in an aroused state, and all of a sudden I'm like paying attention to the guy because I'm searching for this. There was a point where I realized I'm feeling aroused looking at the guy, and I was like, oh no, I've made myself gay. Like that's literally what went through my mind.
I heard you say that on Sophia's podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead, keep going with it.
Well, and the other piece that also looking back was, I carried these insecurities, especially about my physical body and feeling like I didn't always belong with other guys. And I thought it was because they're like, better at sports and stuff. And in porn, you're watching guys that are physically fit. And what I realized now is that I didn't really associate myself as the kind of guy that was getting the girl. So it was like, oh, this is like, there was just more curiosity, a desire in myself to be somebody like that. And so that's just put more attention on it. So all those insecurities in play, the hypersexuality in my brain going on, it all just kind of jumbled together. And I walked away thinking, oh no, I'm attracted to men now. And I I remember I was really devastated when I had that realization.
So let me ask you. So up until that moment when you had that thought, you were like watching the porn, and you were like you were interested in girls and all that.
Yes. Yes.
And then something, because that's interesting. So I shared this before on the podcast where a friend of mine, he was watching a ton of porn, and he was like he was a sex addict,
Yeah.
and at some point he told me, he said that he was watching gay porn, and he's like, I'm not gay, but that was the only way he could get off, because
Wow.
it had to get more for him more twisted. So, and I've heard that that's pretty common actually. It's like if you look, supposedly if you look up the definition of diminishing returns, I heard porn is one of the definitions, because you have to, it has to get more and more hardcore just to get up the same whatever that you get out of it. So yeah, I wonder if that wasn't something there. So your first sexual experience when you actually did go out and hook up with somebody, was it with a guy or a girl?
So my first sexual experiences, I mean, truthfully, I had some like early experimentation when I was like 5 or 6 with a neighbor
Mhm.
kid with another boy.
Mhm.
But even I did some of that with some girls, to be honest.
Mhm.
Um, so when I was in junior high, I talked about wanting to make new friends, and there was one particular kid who was a jerk to me in this process. When there's 5 kids in a class, you want to belong. You gotta you can either make friends with them or not. And early on in the school year, after one of the soccer games, he had a birthday party and he invited everybody but me, and that was just devastating to me. And but because I stayed in that school from 3rd through 8th grade, I actually befriended him, even though it was actually kind of a traumatic experience because I always kind of lived on edge. I don't know if this kid's gonna be nice to me today, or him or the other kids are gonna be nice to me today, or if I'm gonna get made fun of. So I always lived with this like angst of I hope I don't get made fun of today. And I learned to kind of become a chameleon in my personality to do whatever it takes to be accepted.
Mhm.
And and it was this kid that I actually first started acting out with sexually. And
Wow.
and at that time, this did 2 things for me. This kid who had been a major source of me experiencing rejection now is inviting me in
Right.
to like participate with his body. And that's like, it's in my mind, this is as close as you get, right? Like he's
Sure.
letting me into all of it. And
Yeah.
then the other thing is, oh, my body is being accepted. He
Right.
wants my body, and I've hated my body now for some years. And so there was like an emotional hit that was being offered to me, really just in an inappropriate and unhealthy way.
Mhm. Yeah. So I have a friend that it struggles with same-sex attraction, and he had you know said had him send me over some bullet points and some talking points, things that he would like me to ask you. And one
Yeah.
of the things that he said was, he said, do you think there was ever a time when you were younger that your attraction to someone of the same sex was healthy, but somehow it got sexualized, like the devil warped it somehow?
Yeah. So, I mean, truthfully, again, when you get exposed to porn at such a young age, or if you get sexually molested, if you get exposed to sexuality at such a young age,
Mhm.
it just piques a curiosity. We as kids are curious. We as
Mhm.
humans are curious. And over time, you feed that, you just start to view the world through a sexual lens. So every
Right.
like relational transaction is like, sex gonna happen here,
Right.
And
Sure.
so it's like living a porno movie, the part before they actually start having sex.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, I mean, I recognize that, and something I've had to heal and repair is like not viewing friendship. I think a lot of it was just a desire for friendship,
Yeah.
and uh, and instead of going to a sexual place with that.
Mhm.
So I mean, that's a God-given, divine, natural desire that just got corrupted, right? And that's what sucks, because we actually have a need for friendship, and now it's like presenting itself in our minds in an unhealthy way.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting you said that. It made me think when I was my most sexually active, when I was promoting, I was having sex with tons of different women. And I did, everything was seen, the whole world was seen through a lens of sexuality. It was always about, what we're going to do tonight and how the
Yes.
night's going to end. It was always with that in mind, work backward. That was always the goal, was sex. So yeah, every relationship, even my career, when I was stripping, I was nightclub promoting, it was all about getting more women.
Yeah.
It wasn't about necessarily contribution or the things that
No.
life really should be about. So what did you at some point come out to your parents, or how did that work out?
Yeah. So like, I never articulate my story as a way of like coming out, because I
Right.
never actually embraced homosexuality as like, hey guys, I'm gay now or something like
Right.
that. It was like, I have this problem, you know,
Right.
because
Sure.
and actually I'm grateful because a lot of healing has been about like owning that like I'm actually awesome. I don't have to see myself as less as a man, you know, and I don't need to own like, you know, God made my sexuality, you know, like I can own all the good stuff and sort of divorce from the bad stuff,
Right.
and talk a little bit more about that. But my parents found out because I grew up in a spirit-filled Christian family,
Mhm.
and they would have dreams. Honestly, there was like one night we were actually all in Israel, and they had a dream the same night, and I wasn't like acting out. We were on a family mission trip in Israel, and they had a dream that I was struggling, and sure enough, I was. Um, and they confronted me about it. And my mom had been having dreams too, even before then. And you know, from that point, I mean, they wanted to help me. They got me like a counselor, got me involved with some ministries and stuff like that. I think they did the best they could, but I think they also had no clue what to do.
Right. Yeah. What? And because this was what, almost 30 years ago.
So no, well, the dreams was, so after when I was in college, I started acting out regularly with guys I'd meet up online.
Yeah.
And so when I say that, yeah, like probably like every couple months or something like that, I'd have that kind of relapse. So they were having dreams around that time. So I'm already, you know, maybe around 20 years old. So this is 18 years ago. So around like, you know, 2005, that
Yeah.
time. And yeah, and they did their best to help me. And again, they were clueless on what to do. But they were at least like, you know, it wasn't like a, oh, we disown you type thing.
Sure. Yeah. Was there any interest in females at that time, or was it not just they're not on your radar?
So there was, and so for me, like, because I didn't own, like, I knew that this was happening. The same-sex attraction was totally related to something that was just broken in me. Like, I could vividly remember being attracted to women too before that. I know some guys I work with can't, but still, like, it still applies. I just knew it was something about like, oh, like I've hated my body my whole life. I feel like I'm not good enough when I'm around guys. There's things like that. And sorry, I'm blanking. What was the question?
Were you still attracted to women?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of like would try to participate in like, you know, not quite locker room banter, but like if I was with other guys, I'd be like, yeah, she's hot and stuff like that. And actually, it wasn't me trying to pretend. It was like, I hope if I just like so into that part of me, it will grow.
Right.
I never like disowned that could happen for me. It was like, it was truly a faith in God too. Like I know He can restore this.
Right. So it kind of diminished because you were feeding the animal, strength in one, the other one kind of got weaker because you weren't really catering to it, I guess, on some level. Hey, Rob Kowalski here. When I first got serious about living intentionally and becoming a better version of myself, I found a major shortage of things to do and people to do them with. And it was the loneliness and boredom that led me to starting CityFam. So I just want to take a moment right now and encourage you to go over and join the CityFam Facebook community. It's a free Facebook group, and in it you'll find purpose-driven people from all over the world that want to enjoy life to the fullest. You can search it on Facebook, or you can go to www.friendswithbetterbenefits.com and it'll take you right there. While I'm mentioning it, if you're single, searching for real love before sex, as I like to say, I want to encourage you to join the Waiting Works community. That's another free Facebook group I put together designed to help people wait well, date well, and ultimately hit the mark in life and love. You can go to www.reallovewaits.com and I'll see you over there. Now back to the episode. So did your people in your church, because I think I heard on Sophia's podcast, like you guys were like the worship team, right? You and your family?
Yeah. So so at that time though, we were not anymore. We'd left that church. Yeah, but my family was very involved in like contemporary type worship, and it was our family doing it in small churches. You know, to be honest, I do have some wounds from the church. I was involved with the ministry where, you know, I confided in someone and they ended up telling other people. And it took a year until one of my close friends said, hey, like, just so you know, like, about a year ago, someone came up to me because like this was a close friend and he knew about my struggle, but like somebody came to me and said, like, why didn't you tell me that Steven is gay? Like, because they knew that he would know about it. And like that was devastating. I found out I was hot gossip for
Right.
a year and nobody even approached, said, hey, Steven, like, I heard this. I don't know if it's true. Like, you know, and because and again, I never identified as gay. I was struggling with same-sex attraction, and I know there's a line there, but there is a power to own and what we own about like who we believe we are. It's
Dude,
like,
I
no,
love that.
I don't want this to be going on. It is going on, yes.
Yeah.
You know, but I just, you know, so I was really hurt that, oh, I'm the hot gossip. No one's come to me and said, dude, like, is everything okay? Like, is this
Yeah.
true? Do you need help? Like, how can I be a friend to you? So that was really difficult.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
um,
that was all. That's awesome. I love that you separate your action, yeah, you know, what you did versus your identity. And I think that's important for people to understand, because people just come out and like, well, I'm gay. And, you know, versus like you said, I was just struggling with same-sex attraction. It'd be like if I stole something, I'm like, well, I'm a thief. You know,
yeah,
this is what, no, listen, you stole something, you stop. Your identity is whatever God says you are. It's not what you think you are. So, I mean, if I was to subscribe to you know, my identity to my behavior, I'd be like, well, I'm a man whore. And then it gets, it's almost like letting yourself off the hook from doing whatever bad behavior you want, because that's just who you are. I was just born this way. And not to say it's that simple, because I know it's not. This is probably, I remember when I first became a Christian, I was like the biggest man whore I knew. I had sex with hundreds of women, and God told me about a specific girl, and I thought, okay, I'll wait for her. But I remember thinking like, wow, it would be really hard if you had, you know, had same-sex attraction, because then you have to think like, at least I had the thought, one day I'm going to have a lot of sex. You know, I'm going to get married and I'm going to have a bunch of sex. Of course, I didn't know it was going to be 20 plus years before I met the girl. But for someone that is struggling with same-sex attraction, that's a whole nother thing to wrap your mind around, to be like, no, never, you know, never is this going to be okay in God's eyes. And some people will probably even disagree with me saying that, but if you're a fundamentalist, that's kind of true,
yeah.
isn't it?
I mean, look, I read the Bible regularly. I think you have to go through some mental hoops to tell yourself that the Bible's saying something different than that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that God doesn't have compassion and love for us in our process. It doesn't mean that you can be struggling, you know, and he doesn't love you. And like, he knows the things that happened to me and the things I didn't get that I needed to find security, you know, and he has compassion on that.
Yeah.
So like, I think sometimes we are afraid to, in a way, like have goals for ourselves. Like, oh, if I decide I don't ever want to relapse with porn or whatever like that, then porn and masturbation, then if I do it, I feel the shame of feeling like I suck, because I've tried that before and I failed tons and I just felt like hopeless and like, you know, a loser. And so then we kind of move the goalposts. It's like, well, hey, great, I watch porn, but I turn off the porn when I masturbated, and that's improvement. And great, you know, it's improvement, sure, but it's not the end goal. If that becomes, you actually miss the opportunity. Like the shame it stirs up, God wants to heal.
Right.
When we have failures and that pain, like God actually wants to meet us there and love us. And you're missing out on the unconditional love of God, and that's transformational.
That's awesome, Stephen. The friend of mine I told you, he's struggled with same-sex attraction, as far as I know, for most of his life, but he's never acted. He's never hooked up with a guy. And I just feel like that's so commendable, because, you know, he's exactly what you're saying. He's doesn't recognize it as an identity. He's actually been married and had kids and everything else. So what would you say to somebody like you just mentioned, someone that maybe you know, they've tried a bunch of times, they've been struggling with the issue for a long time, and they feel hopeless, like it's just inevitable? What would you say to that person?
I mean, like I would say, like, first off, like I truly have been there. To tell you that I'm almost at 14 years of sobriety from porn and hooking up. I remember really not being sure if I would get there, because I believed, and I mean, it's true, like I believe at some point I'm gonna have to make the decision not to, and I don't believe in my capability to say no. So I just felt buried. And even in, like, you know, I said my parents had dreams and then got me a counselor, got me into like some small groups and things like that. Like I was a mess during that time. You know, I wasn't really seeing any change for the first couple of years. And so what I'm saying is like, I know what that feels like, and I can say to you, change truly is possible.
How much was your wife a part of making, helping you get there? Because I had heard you tell the story where, you know, I think you were dating and you might have relapsed, you know, went out and hooked up with somebody, and then you told her, and she basically was like, look, I'm not going to tolerate that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
how much was that a motivation for you to really get it together?
Yeah. So what happened was about 6 weeks into dating, I watched porn. That would, and I think if I would have hooked up, she probably would have.
Okay.
Been out. Yeah.
Right. Sure.
But yeah, so I watched porn. It was actually straight porn too, to be honest. But again, that would be like moving the goalpost. But hey, it's not, you know what I mean? Like, yes, you can celebrate progress in the journey of recovery, but we still want to keep the end goal the end goal. Sure. But anyway, all that's to say is, yeah, she, you know, I remember her crying. I remember her telling her like that she was hurt, telling me that I was hurt. And she was just honest with me. Like, she's like, I just don't think I have grace. Like, if you were to be using porn, especially if it was gay porn, like, I just don't feel like I'd have grace for that in our relationship, in our marriage. And it wasn't like you know, you need to change or I'm gone or whatever like that. It was actually just like, listen, I'm just being honest. I don't think I can emotionally take that.
Right.
And I really had like the fear of God in me, and like, if I do this, I'm gonna lose her. So that was a moment where I said words came out of my mouth I could not believe I was saying, which is, okay, I'll never do it again. I'll never watch porn again. You know, and I haven't.
Wow.
Yeah. That was almost 14 years ago this summer. So in July, it'll be 14 years, or August, somewhere in there.
Fear is a great motivator. I actually posted a TikTok video today where I was talking about, I did a podcast interview a couple days ago, and I posted a clip from it where the guy was asking me, like, you know, how I made the changes. And I was like, honestly, it was fear in the beginning, because I got baptized in the Holy Spirit when I was 27 years old. And God told me some things about the second coming. Like, and I didn't know when I thought it was getting ready to happen. I was like, you know, I just started seeing some signs, and I heard God's voice for the first time, and I was just scared. That's why I made the changes, and I did a radical 180. So fear, the word says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So you know, it's like being a little kid being scared of your dad coming home, bust your butt if you act up. So yeah, fear can be healthy.
Yeah, I mean, there's natural consequences. I mean, like, I like to view it like, you know, because there's this tension of fear is the beginning of wisdom, and then perfect love casts out fear. And I just like to view it as oil and water, like sin and God are like oil and water. Like, they just cannot be with one another. Otherwise, we'd have a schizophrenic God. We wouldn't know who we're going to. Like, is he gonna be a jerk today? Or is he gonna be like, you know what I mean? But he's always consistent. We know who he is, and because there's clear boundaries around that, and yeah, there's just a fear, like, you know, like, I don't want my heart to get cold, and you know, on this journey, I want to finish well. Like, there's lots of fears of the faith that haven't, and there's a fear of God to steward my heart so that doesn't happen. Because if these awesome dudes before me fell, I don't want to repeat that.
Do you ever think about where you'd be if you hadn't turned it around?
You know, I saw that question before coming on here, and I have to admit, no, because you know what? This is so much better.
I'm sure. Yeah.
It's just, oh my gosh, I hated myself, dude. You got to realize I hated myself. I thought so lowly of myself, and confidence is a better portion. I like feeling confident. I like embracing this world where I've chosen to love the way I express masculinity. I love the way I look, love the way I think, love the way, you know, I can relate to people. And I mean, and that's a journey. Like, sometimes I can, you know, feel some self-loathing come up, and I have to process that. But because here's the other piece too, like, to participate, like, with a gay thought, to participate and be like, oh yeah, I'd want to be with another guy, that would take me back to a place where I thought they had something in their masculinity that I didn't have, and I wanted to get close to it. And it's way better to own it for myself. It's way better to love, like, that, you know, just because it's your crowd, own that I'm a badass, you know, own that, like, that is for me, you know. And I'm not gonna tolerate in my own life belief systems that aren't congruent with that, because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, and I'm gonna praise him for that.
Yeah, that's great. And I often think about that for myself because if God didn't intervene in my life, where would I be? And it's never a good place. I'm always like, God, I probably would look terrible. All the people I would have hurt. And I
Sure.
think, yeah, how I'd be feeling about myself and all the regret I'd have. So I just wonder if your mind ever goes there. But what you just said takes me kind of to the next point, because from an outsider's perspective, it seems like men who pursue other men, they have a much higher turnover rate when it comes to partners. Do you think there's something that they're looking for and not finding? You mentioned like this missing piece of masculinity, and then
Yeah.
whatever that thing is, maybe it can't ever be filled. So what would you say to that?
So remember I said like the kid that I acted out with in junior high, it was like all of a sudden I'm getting this acceptance and validation of my body because he wants to be with it. So every time, a guy in a homosexual relationship like gets that validation, they feel really great. But when you keep getting it from the outside like that, you don't do the internal work of owning it. Just being like, I'm a badass. I don't need another. I'm not going to give that to another person to prove that to me. That's between me and God, and I'm going to carry that. So they never actually like step into that confidence. And I have 3 kids, and I can connect with the fathering heart here and say, I have no desire to raise insecure children. You know what I mean? So they never deal with the insecurity. So they get that validation, they realize they still feel empty. But then, here's another, and they felt validated when they got it before, or,
Dude, yeah.
or because they haven't owned it for themselves, they're still looking at other men and like, what's the word, fawning over them, thinking like, man, like I wish I had that, instead of like going on the journey of loving yourself.
Right.
And that to me is really the key. So, and the other thing too is truthfully, male and female sexuality is so incredibly different. So like, like lesbian couples tend to like attach for a really long time comparatively to men. So
didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's just one of those things for like I said, it has to do with one, how we're made, and like God designed a man to be with a woman, to really fill it, like to really experience fulfillment, because it's going to force you to fulfill like your role as a man in a marriage with a woman. Like you'll get confronted with your weakness, and you'll have to step up into ownership so you can provide that strength to her.
I've often thought about that. I'm like, it might be easier, and I'm just joking, but I was like, it might be easier to be gay because of the way that men and women, they think so different. So it forces you to like really mature in a lot of ways. And I think that's what God wants. If you thought exactly like your buddy and you just happen to be sexually attracted to him, it'd probably be a lot less drama. Of course, I'm not advocating that because of everything I believe, but I'm just saying it tongue in cheek, like almost as a joke. What was your relationship with your dad like? Did you have a close one?
We struggled. So he never had a dad himself. So he never knew it for a single day. And so he struggled with insecurity really his whole life. And the combination of that, plus the fact, like I said, like him and my mom had some struggles around finances. I think, and I'm the youngest of 4. I think he was just exhausted, and therefore he would kind of veg out and watch TV in the evening. And that's like a common picture. I mean, and it wasn't all bad. Like he also it was either that or he'd be worshiping God and on the piano. And I do appreciate that aspect, but that's one piece that he gave me. But there's just other pieces about like just childhood experiences, boyhood experiences that build up a child's masculinity, or a belief that, hey, like I'm a boy, I like who I am, all that kind of stuff that he just wasn't equipped from his own story to give me, and therefore we struggled a lot.
Yeah. I wonder if that's where some of it might have came from too.
Absolutely.
I was talking to, I don't remember who it was. It was another podcast, and they were asking me about my relationship with my mom. And, we didn't really, we have a great relationship, but there wasn't like, it wasn't intimacy, I guess you would say. It wasn't like we didn't really ever get deep very often to really know what was going on with each other past the, couple feet. And he said it's not uncommon that you would have sought that attention out from from women. So that's why, because I thought it was just horny, but it was what you said, instant validation, but then the feeling goes away, and then you go try to find it again. And
Yes.
it really is just a downward spiral to the point where there's no fulfillment. You'll never find it there. Yeah. So, what do you think that every person that struggles with same-sex attraction can be free from it? Or meaning, like, is there anyone that is born gay and they can't be attracted to the opposite sex? Do you believe, or is that, so you worked with a lot of people that have this issue?
So I don't believe people are born gay.
Okay.
And I think I think that it's possible to steward your attraction and grow it. So the truth is I have clients I work with who don't struggle with same-sex attraction, and I've had guys acknowledge me, like, I'm not attracted to my wife, even though SSA is never part of their story. The truth is like I said, developing a great sex life and marriage and attraction, all is stewarded and can grow. And sometimes it's just that. I just think that my opinion is that when guys who struggle with same-sex attraction experience it, and especially if they're like actively engaging and using gay porn and things like that,
Right.
they just will immediately, I guess it's just because I'm attracted to men. They'll come to that conclusion.
Right. So basically no one is really born gay, and can pretty much anyone be free from it? Or do you think that sometimes it may be an issue that you'll have to kind of deal with on some level for the rest of your life?
So yes, I believe people can be free from it, but let's define, like, you can be dealing with something your whole life and be free from it. Like, right. So the Bible says, keep your heart with all diligence. There's no end date to that command. So the truth is if you get really good at knowing your story and understand all the circumstances that feed the same-sex attraction or any kind of unwanted behavior or attraction, and learn to have compassion, you'll realize, gosh, like, I'm actually a good person. I'm a good kid. I was always a good kid. I just wasn't nurtured in the way that I needed it. And therefore, when, something that was unhealthy was presented to me, I took it and owned it for myself. And that, when you realize that, you can divorce the idea, like, oh, it's not that I'm actually gay. To me, like, I use a couple analogies. It's like planting a palm tree at the North Pole. It's just not going to work. You know what I mean? It's just like, it didn't get the environment it needed. So all that is to say that to live 14 years free from, porn relapse and stuff like that, it doesn't mean that there's thoughts I don't want, that I don't have to take captive and also process and heal. And the more I actually do that, the truth is, the freer I become. So there's things that I used to be attracted to that I'm not, but sometimes there's stray thoughts that I'm like, yeah, that's coming up again. And sometimes it's the same sex thought, but that doesn't take me back to, oh, I'm gay. It's like, oh, I know the story here. I know how I created that. Like, that's the other thing. There's physiology in our brain and how our brain processes information. So like, your brain will create a brain rut. Like, if you looked at guys for years and thought, oh, that's attractive, opportunity for sex, like, your brain will do that thinking for you. It will move that thought pattern to your subconscious, and then you'll be there before you have an opportunity to really respond to it.
Gotcha.
So it's about knowing your story. And as you process it, though, you will create new brain paths, and the other ones will kind of grow over. Like, that's why, like, it's not like, do I struggle with pulls to go back, to that? No, I don't. Do I struggle with the pull to use porn? I truly don't, honestly.
Yeah. That's what I feel like it's been for me. It's been something that I've gotten stronger and stronger at over time. Like, I can't remember the last time I looked at porn. It hasn't been 14 years, but it's been months. And then those are just isolated incidents when I get into a really low spot.
Yeah.
They've happened. But far less frequently than when I first attempted to do all this. And so you mentioned the process. Like, what is your process like? What is the keys to recovering from SSA? And you're a coach too, so you coach a lot of guys with this issue. So yeah, I'm sure there's people out there that are going to be watching it. They're going to know people that or people that are watching that are dealing with it. So they're going to know people that they care about that are dealing with it. So I'd love for you to share a couple tips.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, it does start with, there is that fine line. You can acknowledge what's happening and be honest about that. but you don't necessarily have to own that as your identity. And that leads to like the first key is to understand that there's a story in your life that has contributed to where you are at. So there's a story in my life that contributed to how I started experiencing same-sex attraction. I actually know, and I'm going to just interject one thing here because this is important. I know guys, I've heard stories of guys who, had similar experiences to me where they were acting out with, other boys when they're a teenager or a preteen, and then their dad talked to them like, no, you're not gay. You're just a stupid teenager.
Right.
Like your body's, if you're going to try to arouse your body, you're going to feel aroused. And that's just not what we do with our sexuality. That's, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But hearing those words from an authority figure, like a parent is an authority figure, like that just, think of all the shame that's gone. It's like, oh gosh, like I'm not weird, I'm not gay, like letting go of that, So, but the point is let's say you didn't get that. Most of us didn't get regular conversations about sexuality in our upbringing, right? Maybe we got one or two, and then a stern talking to when we were discovered to be using porn. So like the truth is that when you understand how your story has contributed to your brokenness, you can have compassion. It's like, man, it really sucked. Like self-compassion would look like saying to myself, it really sucks that like you didn't have anybody to talk to about this, and that you navigated, and that you carried the weight and shame of feeling like you were gay, carried the weight and shame of like feeling like you've lost your future because you always wanted to be a dad and always wanted a wife, so you can speak compassion to yourself, and then just validate how it makes sense that these struggles could exist for you based on the environment that you grew up in. And so like that to me is key, that is such a key because it forces you to know your story. And there's studies that show being able to articulate your story is a sign of healing, is a sign of health. Because like, for example, if Rob, if I came to you and said, Rob, I used porn the other day, and you said, well, how'd that happen? And you're like, I don't know. And I said to you, I don't know. And I'm going to do it again because I don't know how I got there. I'll repeat the same process. So there's a real power to knowing your story.
Yeah, that's good. I did something called the Crucible Project the end of last year, and I talk a lot about your shadow self. And that's the part of you that you repress, deny, and I think regret. So it's like that, you push it back. And it's really like how do you get over it is when you acknowledge it.
Yes.
Versus shaming yourself over, versus being like you're bad because you got angry at that guy, like you try to beat it back down, like that's going to do something, and it doesn't work at all, and eventually it comes out. So I like what you said about that, saying, given the hand that you were dealt or whatever, you kind of almost love it away.
Exactly. You like, if I saw a 12-year-old or 13-year-old kid who is struggling and started struggling with same-sex attraction, I just want to give him a hug. Like, dude, you're fine. Like, I'll walk with you. I'm not going to beat you up. I'm not ashamed of you. And like, we'll figure this out. There's reasons for this. Trust me. And as an adult, him hearing that from me, it come from an adult, it would soothe him. He'd be able to relax and be like, all right, and so you realize that these unwanted attractions or unwanted behaviors are basically like childhood wounds that are just manifesting today because they were never tended to properly. So you treat yourself in that same way. Like you said, if you try to push it away, repress it or whatever, that's typically shame. It's like, I hate this part of myself. And therefore we're in conflict with ourselves. So it doesn't do anything for us. It doesn't actually heal. So you got to acknowledge what's happening and embrace and validate it. And then to me, the other piece of loving is having people you can talk to about it. Like, prove that you are unconditionally loved by being known. And as people know your story, they will say things that will, like, they'll bring tears to your eyes. They'll be healing. Other people validating it. It's powerful, and we're made for community. You're all about that. And but have people like process it, and have people in your world who know your story, the ins and the outs of it. And so I mean, to me, that's how to really walk it out. I would say like a really important piece too is that recognize that, I'll say this. Studies show that the number one thing that keeps an adolescent out of high-risk behavior is a close relationship with a parent. Adolescence is like, it's a really formative time for us. It takes a few years. And again, these wounds happened typically even before adolescence and then manifested through adolescence. So my point is practice unconditional love to yourself, knowing that it's like you're going to have patience with yourselves.
Mhm.
Like you may be processing stuff over and over again as you're like, yep, here's that thought again. I
Right.
wish it wasn't here, but it's here. And dude, I still don't beat you up that this is happening. And you may want to invest in someone who can help you navigate this, because it's
Mhm.
easy to fall back into just beating ourselves up. Like my wife and I talked about, we had a broken marriage, even though I've never used porn in our marriage, but we got a coach and she taught us how to do conflict well. And that took us 3 years of coaching to, after 1 year, we got out of what I called chaos mode, where it was, a shit show all the time. And then 2 years to just sustain that and thrive. So like, know that you're worth the investment. Like,
Yeah,
get help. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's powerful, actually.
that's great. So the buddy that I was telling you about that was been struggling with SSA for as long as I've known him, he started working with Sathia, and he was watching gay porn every day, multiple times a day, felt like complete shit. And he's did like, I think he did like, he just finished like either a 10-day or a 14-day. So one of the things that he heard me talk about was when I was really trying to kick my sexual addiction, I started doing these covenants, writing these covenants with God, where I would make a promise to God to not look at porn or hold a thought in my mind for a certain period of time. And basically I'd ask God to bless me if I kept it, but punish me if I didn't. And I'd sign it. And so he just did this. And I think he did like his either second or either 10-day or 14-day. So he's killing it, because he just was literally watching every day, and he started working with the coach, and now he feels great, and he's just really doing well. So I do want to ask you a couple more questions, but since we're talking about it, tell everybody about your coaching program and how they can find it.
Yeah. So I offer individual coaching. I also offer coaching in the context of a small group. And then I also do couples coaching. So I'll just say, like, my heart, I'll really dial in on individual. My heart is to kind of give to other people what, I described I got with my wife in a coach, where realizing that, like, we need somebody to walk with and to help us just get over those hurdles. Like, it's good to set goals for yourself, and because when you try to hit that goal and then you fail, it just that's where all the triggers are at. That's where all the pain is at, and that's where we can navigate and heal, so that we can get you over that hump. And to me, like, this is about downloading a new operating system of doing life, right? So it's renewing the mind. It's not, I don't offer a quick fix. Like, you may see sobriety happen. I've had clients that have, like, right off the bat experienced sobriety and have sustained it, but still, it's like, we're going to heal now too. We want to sustain this. We want to get all the new thought processes and all the new develop new ways of just living, because the way we lived before got us to where we were. and really set ourselves up to live like a sustained life of freedom, where we are continually overcoming, where we are equipped to do it even without a coach, and we're helping others.
Yeah.
So that's really my heart, is to walk with people in that way. And even if people, like, end up not working with me, like, I have some clients I've worked with for over a year, but even if someone comes in for 3 months or something like that, like, I always encourage, like, keep going, find what you need, and that's kind of the heart, is, hey, let's set some goals, let's get some let's pay attention to the triggers that get up between you and where you want to be, and let's work through that.
I want to ask you about something you mentioned before. You're talking about authority figures and how powerful that is. Like when that dad spoke to their teenage kid, had been messing around. He's like, dude, you're not gay, you're just stupid, whatever. So now it's the opposite's being forced on us, right? So you got teachers and everybody's really just cramming it down their throats. So I'm curious to hear, like, your thoughts on that. Like, what were some of the negative ways this came back on you later? Because what I feel like is, when you're young, I think I remember wearing my mom's, like, high heels around the house when I was a little kid or whatever. I didn't know anything. So it's like, when you're that small, you don't know really anything. So when I wonder, this is being so heavily forced on them, how is this going to come back on them negatively later, is what I wonder. What do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've had clients where it was like that story. Oh, I was 4 years old and put on high heels, and then my grandma bought me a dress. And it's like, what? Like, what I mean? It's like, if it was a dude, if you said it was a grandpa, I'd be like, I want to go punch that guy. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, it's stupid. Like this. Here's the thing. I have to say something about parenting. Like, your kids are gonna be curious. They're gonna explore things. It's not a big deal if your 7 or 8-year-old boy like laugh because he puts on high heels or something like that. You know what I mean? That's not like, your job as a parent is to help guide them in their identity. You know, and like if you start saying to them, oh, that, you know, like that, you must be a girl, like you're setting them up to really, one, they know they're a boy, everyone knows like they're what they biologically are, and you put this question, oh, I guess something's wrong with me. You know what I'm saying? Like something's wrong. So now you've introduced some anxiety, some like internal conflict that they now have to wrestle with. So I mean, we've seen such a rise in depression and anxiety, you know, and it's to me, it's a lack of, you know, authority figure that we can rest and be like, oh, good, my dad said that, and I can trust my dad, because that's how God designed it. That we have a role model, and to be real, I mean, there's been an attack against family. Lots of people grew up in a family with 2 parents, but still didn't have a role model. Like I said, I wasn't connected with my dad, right? And I know I'm bouncing around a lot, but my point is that like I just see lots of mental illness as a result of all this.
Yeah.
Emotional illness as a result of all this. I see a lot of pain.
Yeah, same. It's like the fabric of society has been completely changed over like this the last few years, things that have existed forever. And now they're trying to redefine everything. And I'm like, I just wonder how, like, what is the world going to be like? As crazy as it is now, think about what it's going to be like when 30 years from now, because my childhood was fairly normal. And now look at it, it's crazy. What's it going to be like, you know, 20 or 30 years from now when these people get older and they're running things? I don't know. Like, I know Jesus has got to be coming back soon because I don't think we're going to make it.
Well, you know, I'll say like at the core of why I've launched my own business is I'm stealing this from somebody named Danny Silk, but he has this phrase that resonates deeply with me. I believe that whole healthy families are going to change the world. Like, this is about seeing men, you know, if a guy without a porn problem is going to be able to be more present, he's going to be able to be that role model.
Yeah.
You know, and healthy families, like,
yeah,
they're gonna do awesome things. Yeah, that's just the core of why I do this, is to see that rebuilt. To me, this is about family.
I love it. Actually, I feel the same way with my message with the waiting, because I do feel like it's the best chance for you to find real love is to not have sex before marriage, because you ask yourself the really hard questions on the front end. So it's like if we just made that one change, if people just waited till marriage, like then we would have a lot more families. We'd have a lot more successful marriages, 2 people in a loving relationship with a child or children that they're raising, modeling a good relationship for them. Man, it would change the world. It absolutely would.
Yeah.
It's, you know, getting people to subscribe to it and do it, that's a whole different thing. But I believe exactly what you said.
You know, before I did this, I was an engineer for 8 or 9 years, and the thing that testified to people was people saw I had a strong family life. And it opened up the doors where people wanted to know about me, want to know what's my secret sauce, you know, and it opened doors to tell them about Jesus, to tell them about my relationship with Jesus. Like, people want connection, and being at home where you're disconnected, that's actually a really common experience where everybody lives together, but it's not like everyone enjoys being around each other. And or, you know, going through marriage and struggling, like that's a common experience. People want to know the answers, like, how do I do this, you know? And you know, like you said, forcing yourself to do that internal work of like, why am I triggered right now? Like, where is my story showing up in this? And just becoming emotionally healthy people, so we can love well. That's where people are going to be like, I need to know what you know.
Yeah, man, this was great. I really appreciate you coming on. Tell everybody where they can find you online and on social media.
My website is StephenThomasConsulting.com, Stephen with a PHEN, and then you can find me on Facebook.com/Stephen Thomas Consulting.
Awesome. I'll put all that in the notes below. Dude, this is great. I really appreciate your insight, Stephen.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. We'll stay connected, I'm sure. So
absolutely.
Okay. Take it easy.